Do you speak Venusian? I'm not talking about the made up language of people who identify as from Venus. I guess that's a thing now. I don't know. I'm talking about knowing how to communicate with the opposite sex effectively. C.S. Lewis wrote in The Hideous Strength, the cardinal difficulty, said McAfee, in collaboration between the sexes is that women speak a language without nouns. If two men are doing a bit of work, one will say to the other, put this bowl inside the bigger bowl, which you will find on top of a green cupboard. The female for this is put that in the other one there. And then if you ask them in where, they say in there, of course. There's consequently a phallic hiatus. I said that wrong. Maybe that's extreme, maybe not. But we do communicate differently, and knowing how to communicate effectively will change your relationship in a huge way. So let's go. Here's the million-dollar question. How do men like us reach our full potential and grow into the men we dream of being while taking care of our responsibilities, working, being good husbands, fathers, and still take care of ourselves? That's the question, and this podcast will help you with those answers. My name is Brent, and welcome to the Fallible Man Podcast. Welcome to the Fallible Man Podcast, your home for all things man, husband, and father. Big shout out to the Fallible Nation. You guys make things like this possible, and a warm welcome to our first-time listeners. My name is Brent, and I am the Fallible Man, in case you were confused about that, but I doubt it. I was just doing a show with our friends over at Love Vitamins for Relationships podcast, and had a great time talking marriage. And as always, you learn when you share things. So I wanted to share 4 communication tips that really help Sarah and I when we aren't communicating the best, to come back to solid ground and be together. Things that have kept us together in good times and bad times for 21 years of marriage. So let's get into this, guys. Number 1, how does my spouse communicate by preference? There are a lot of different ways to communicate. And if you're communicating one way and she's communicating another, you may be having a Mars versus Venus kind of discussion. There are some major things to consider before an important conversation, and really in every conversation. So here's a couple questions I want you to ask yourself before you start a communication with your spouse. Does she prefer to communicate verbally, in writing, or in some other form? Does she need privacy to talk away from others, or is she okay just having a casual conversation around people? And that will really depend on the conversation you're having. Possibly, not always. Do you need to position yourself beside her, in the same room with her, eye to eye? Where do you physically need to be to communicate ideally with her? These are all things to consider when you're communicating with her. If you want a positive communication, then those questions really need to be answered. And those are the easy ones. Number 2, is the timing right or wrong? Now, you can derail an entire conversation with some bad timing. There are things you have to communicate without waiting, but those are actually far and few between. You can't wait for the perfect time, because we err on that side too, right? Well, it doesn't exist for all subjects. You just have to pick a more effective and preferable time than waiting for the perfect time. Try these questions before you engage in an important conversation with your spouse. Is she focused on something else right now? Is this interrupting something she's doing right now? Is she stressed about something currently? Is it pressing, or does it need to wait for a little while? Will the conversation derail the direction you need to move in the next 30 minutes to an hour or longer? What's your motivation behind the conversation? Are you right to want to talk to her now? Or is that just some selfishness pushing through, and it could actually wait? These are all really important questions, and you may have to go back and write them all down. I'm not going to write them all out for you. You guys are pretty smart. Number 3, priorities and processes. We all process information at our own speed. Some of us quite differently. I process stuff very rapidly if I'm not already distracted with a dozen other things. My wife needs a proposal, contemplation, reflection, clarity questions, more contemplation, then your opinion on it, then more time, and then she's ready. Now, I don't say that to pick on my wife. She's just processing information in a very different way than I am, which this alone has resulted in a lot of arguments. I didn't understand this early on, and how much it stressed her out for me to push for that response right now, because I'm hey, I can process it just quick, and I'm ready for an answer. And I don't understand why we don't have immediate responses and answers to things. This has taken a lot of time for me to try and refine. And I exaggerated my wife's process just to make sure you understand. People process things differently and at different speeds and in different ways. Some people need the clarity questions. Some people need more time to think about it. Some people need your opinion and you weigh in on it or they weigh in on it. There's a lot at stake. So before you start the conversation, try asking yourself these questions. Put priority information, well, before you start the conversation, not questions really. Put priority information in the front of the conversation, front load it. If you want an answer, if you want to actually have something weighed and get some kind of response, front load the conversation. Put priority information in the front. Don't add distractions and useless information that isn't relevant during the conversation if you want to speed up that response time. If there's a time factor, you need to let her know upfront and why there is a time factor affecting it, so she knows at the beginning of the conversation that we really need to come to some kind of decision on this. Allow for time to process at her chosen speed if at all possible. If she needs to talk through it in gratuitous detail, then do it. Allow for that. When you start the conversation, you better know that going in. If she needs time to think, don't rush it. You have to allow for that going in unless there's an ultimatum time issue in play. If she's a quick processor, make sure you have quick answers ready if she has more questions, which you should have going in the conversation that matters. Number 4. Now, this is the secret sauce, guys. This is the Venusian right here. Know her personality type for communication. Most people have never heard or are not familiar with the concept of PCM communication. PCM communication it's everywhere. Every marketing firm and large business in the world uses this every day to reach you. PCM communication is actually used in over 200 countries and in every Fortune 500 company. NASA's been using it for 20 years. Great speakers practice and learn the PCM communication model. And this is actually broken down the process communication model, PCM. It's been used forever. Now, I could go really deep on this, but I don't think I'm actually necessarily qualified to do it. I think you can even get certified in PCM communication, but here's what you need to know. What's really relevant to you on this. There are 6 major personality types, and most people are a combination of 2. The 6 personality types are the thinker, the persister, the harmonizer, the imaginer, the rebel, and the promoter. No, this is not some pseudoscience. This is not star charts. This is not some woo-woo kind of nonsense. Like, this is beyond research. Companies use this every day to try and convince you to buy things. Like, this is the big marketing sword most people don't know about. Each of these 6 communication types has a very specific style of communication that is more important, more effective, and more efficient for them. My wife is a thinker and an imaginer. When I talk to her, I need to feed her communication needs with logic and facts that are clear and fact-filled, with a bit of creativity and some dreams. Terminology like, imagine what we could do if we took this money and invested it in X for our home, then listed the practical applications of said purchase, followed by, think of how much easier it would make this part of your day and free up some of our schedule. Does this sound like a marketing campaign to you? It's the basic format for a few, right? It's dream and imagine what it can be and how great that can be, list the practical, and then go back to ending with dreaming of the freedom that you want. Okay? Now, it's a very common format for a lot of advertising. This same conversation actually doesn't do anything for me. This doesn't reach me in advertising. I know this one is a bit more complicated than some of the other points I brought up, but trust me, it's absolutely worth it. It is not just for getting what you want, by the way. This FYI, my wife has the same psychological needs in all the conversations she has. So when I talk to her, the language I use is critical to her feeling good about the conversation and feeling like we had a complete conversation. I need to communicate with the terminology, with the language, with the words that speak to her and communicate clearly to her. We need to cover the logical portion. We need to cover the imagination and dream portion of it. And I also know I need to give her some time. Now, if you want to communicate effectively with your spouse and be the king of communicating, it will be worth the short amount of time that it will take you to understand the basic concepts, because you don't have to go deep into PCM, guys. You don't have to get a certification. You don't have to become an expert. It will be well worth the short amount of time it will take you to Google and YouTube PCM communication to get a better understanding of communicating with your spouse. But I promise once you do, it will increase the power in your conversations, and both of you will come away from conversations feeling more complete and like you had a better communication. This is really, really powerful if you're willing to do a little bit of homework. Like I said, it's not going to take you long. Bonus tip, guys, make sure she feels heard. Communication is a two-way street, so listen more than you talk in a conversation and make sure you're paying attention to what she has to say. Now, guys, I haven't done this on the last couple shows, but I wanted to thank all of you guys. You guys are doing amazing things for me. This is a recent review. Thoroughly inspiring. As a thoughtful, engaging storyteller, Brent serves to remind us that the Fallible Man is an empowered and aware human being. The content messaging throughout his program speaks volumes about the toolbox needed to live as a person of integrity while nevertheless remaining humble and imperfect. I keep this pod in my permanent playlist of infinitely inspiring and uplifting gems. That was from a user Upon a Branch. Thank you so much. You guys have no idea how powerful those reviews are for us. They help us get ranked and share and get spread even farther upon Apple Podcast users. They make sure more people hear about the show. And guys, they mean a world to me. They inspire me. They encourage me to keep going on this. And so thank you, Upon a Branch, for sharing that. I apologize that I haven't been reading these on some of the shows, and I told you guys I was going to. Guys, if you want to communicate more effectively with your spouse, you absolutely want to just solidify that, because that will change your relationship in 2023 and beyond. Then you need to level up your communication skills. And guys, if you want to work with me directly, go to www.fallibleman.com/coaching to check into our personal development and lifestyle coaching for men. I would love to meet with you on a discovery call and see if we're the right fit, if you think I can help you, because I would love to just walk that walk with you. Thanks for listening, guys. Be better tomorrow because of what you do today, and we'll see you on the next one.
This has been the Fallible Man Podcast, your home for everything man, husband, and father. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a show. Head over to www.thefallibleman.com for more content and get your own Fallible Man gear.